house lots that weren't constructed on because of the flooding in the area. We constructed drainage projects that run through those neighborhoods and then through those lots and outfall into the drainage system of Route 24 and then across Route 24 to our interceptor that's on the east side of Route 24, and all that water is now conveyed down to the south Watuppa Pond. We do have, so we just completed the construction projects this spring. We still have some punch list items left on the, it was bid out as one project, Tyson Street North and South. We do have some punch list items left with the contractor that won't be able to be completed till the planting season in the fall. We're also working with Mass DOT to do a crossing of Route 24 for the Hyacinth Street South project. We're expecting for that to be completed by this fall. DOT will be milling and overlaying that section of Route 24, so we'll be in there before they do that milling and overlaying. So the projects, in my eyes, so far, I've been through there when we had some heavy rains in the spring, and they seem to be functioning properly. The drainage systems that were installed, as well as the overland reliefs from the, so when the drainage system fills up, the projects were designed so it would also have overland relief where the water would travel over that land to be conveyed to the back of the lot if it overcame the drainage system. I've spoken with many of the neighbors out there. They, compared to the past, they are very happy on how the system works. And in the spring, we did have some heavy rains that, they said that during those rains, the streets would have been flooded, so.
Okay. Are they seeing any flooding whatsoever?
Not that I've been made aware of. We
Okay.
do have, on the Hyacinth Street South lot, we do have some best management practices, so retention areas that fill up during the rain, and then after the rain, the water dissipates.
Right.
The neighbors told me that those function very well, so.
And you had mentioned at the last council meeting that you'd be maintaining, obviously, those lots to make sure that the drainage systems are obviously working as designed.
Yes, correct. So we'll be maintaining them with our crews. Naturally, a lot like that, one of them we have open swale, and the other one we have BPM's best management practices. Those are areas that allow nutrients and phosphates to be pulled out of the water. TSS, that's in the water, which is total suspended solids, to be pulled out of the water. That's what a grassy swale helps to improve the water quality prior to it going all the way down to the South Watuppa.
Okay. Council Pelletier?
Yeah, when you're connected in the west side under Route 24 to go to Canal,
Yes, to go to the interceptor drain.
is that started yet?
The design has started. We've been working with Mass DOT to do it as part of their milling and overlay project of Route 24. I expect that construction to be complete before the fall.
Now, when they do the work there, are they gonna interrupt the highway, or they tunnel
Yeah.
in, or what are they doing?
Yep, so there'll be detour routes set up. We're still working with DOT on those detour routes. Again, it's DOT that's gonna be doing the work for the city, so they'll be in charge of the detours. There's been multiple renditions of what the detour will be, whether it'll be a detour of the full Route 24, which Route 24 does have excellent routes for detour, being Route 79. Traffic could be brought down Route 79 or could be brought down Eastern Avenue. If it is a full shutdown like that, it'd be for a limited period of time, let's say a weekend or something like that. The other option that DOT has been looking at is shutting down lanes at a time and still leaving lanes open for travel on Route 24.
So what's the timeline on the whole job?
So that construction, depending on how they allow the detours to be worked through that area, if it's a full shutdown, they're talking potentially a weekend.
Oh,
If it's a lane closure, it'd probably be 3 to 4 weeks.
it'll be done before the winter.
Yes.
All right.
DOT is working on their milling project. As far as I've seen from their last schedule update, they're working to complete their milling on 24 before the winter as well.
All right, just one more question. What is your position on the two properties that my colleagues would like to sell, put on the tax rolls?
Yep, so, we have 2 lots there that we had to buy to install these drainage projects. They are the low-lying lots of 25-acre drainage area and a 27-acre drainage area. So that's the one low point that all those houses, all that streets, everything comes to. You know, when we build a drainage system, it's tough, because you can build a drainage system.
Mr. Furlong, can I just interrupt you for a second, just for my own clarification? Are you talking about the lots on Hyacinth Street or
Yeah.
additional? Okay, so those two
The
lots
two
that,
lots,
that
right.
we've, okay.
Yeah, so when we build and design a drainage system, you design it for a certain year storm. So you design it for the 5-year storm, the 10-year storm, you know, and the highest storm, the biggest storm that you get, the bigger the drainage system is. So, you know, and naturally, the bigger the drainage system is, the more money a drainage system costs to install. So when we're designing a drainage system, we have to look at it economically on what's the proper size for that area and what runs off that and where it can go. The drainage systems that we went in that area were designed for the 5- and 10-year storm. You know, if we were to go for a drainage area that size and design for the 50-year storm or the 100-year storm, we would end up with, you know, large concrete canals like you see in the movies in LA. You know, not something that we have the ability to construct, the funding to construct, or the need to construct. That's why with those lots, you'll see there's curb inlets where the curb is depressed in a couple of areas. That allows, if the drainage systems become overwhelmed, that allows the water to go onto the lot, run over the land, and still end up where the outlet of the drainage system is. If you take those lots and the city sells them, we still end up with a drainage pipe right on the side of a house
Yeah.
that we have to maintain, potentially in the future that we have to go in and repair. You know, there's always maintenance that needs to be done to those. So we'd be on the side of somebody's house, in their yard. Again, there would be an easement that we have, but easements are very tough, especially when you get 4 or 5 owners down the line. You know, so it would have to be something that we would have to fully protect that easement. We need to make sure that that easement stays in our possession and that nothing is constructed on there or nothing encroaches on it. The other thing, you know, it's still the low point of a 25-acre drainage area. You know, to put a house there, I don't think would be in the best interest of the city. We've made the investment currently, and I think we need to stay with that, stay with the decisions that we've
So
made.
you don't want to sell it?
No.
Okay, now is that, all that water going under 24?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I yield.
Councilor Dion?
I just have 2 questions. One being, what is the capacity of the drainage system, and what amount of rainfall would be required for it to be considered a 10-year storm?
So it all depends on the intensity. You go a 2-hour rainstorm, 4-hour rainstorm. 10-year storm, I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look at the nautical, the Navy's charts to determine that. But
Okay. My second question is, both lots have punch list items and retainage that still needs to be completed. Are the punch list items similar? What are they in nature?
yeah, so we're still looking at, you know, the grass growth out there. We're not happy with the grass growth, so that's something the contractor's gonna have to deal with in the fall. The fences were completed as of a couple of weeks ago, so that was on a punch list item. That was completed, but other than that, there's nothing major that needs to be completed on those lots.
Okay, and lastly, I said 2, I have 3. And lastly, in here it states that there's still a neighbor that was a little unsettled. Corporation Council considers the matter closed. Where is that? I mean, is there still a disagreement?
So-
Have they reached some,
There was a neighbor that had a claim against the city. Corporation Council responded that the claim is closed. The resident has whatever legal rights that he has to you know, continue that claim, so.
so we don't know where the neighbor is at this point, but on the city side, we feel it's been,
Yeah,
Handled.
we feel that the claim has been closed.
okay, with that I yield, thank you.
Thank you. Are you doing a box culvert under 24? Is that what's being proposed,
two-
or is it just
We looked
Piping.
at a box culvert. The lead time for the pipe was a bit much, so we're looking at 2 36-inch pipes now.
Okay.
Originally, the plan was underneath 24 was to directional drill.
Yeah.
Once we did some test pits out there, that was an option. Jacking and boring wasn't an option, so the only thing left was open cut across Route 24.
Okay. All right, and then just in terms of responsibility of the culvert over 24, do we maintain that? Does the state maintain that after?
It'll be jointly, so it won't be solely ours. It'll be jointly because there is state DOT drainage that will go through that culvert as well, so it'll be
Mhm.
jointly owned and maintained.
Okay. So all that runoff goes into that canal from 24?
Yeah, there is portions of it. Yeah,
Portions.
all the way down 24, there's different ones, but there will be additional 24 drainage that will go through there.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Just one more question, sorry.
Yes, Councilor Dion.
So in terms of that drainage going under 24, where the state will have some part in it, are there gonna be, is there gonna be any funding coming from the state, or is the city?
Nope, so we're funding the cost for the installation. Since they already have the project ongoing and it'll be part of their project, they're assisting with some traffic control and other stuff like that, so that is reducing the cost that we need to pay.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Pelletier?
Motion?
Motion grant to leave to withdraw?
Yes?
Motion
Can we
was,
do, all right. And number 3 is same thing as number 2?
it is. Yeah, I'm just trying to clear up the
Yeah.
committee, so
All right, can
Um,
we do both at the same time, take one at a time?
let's do one at a time.
Okay.
Motion grant to leave to withdraw was made by Councilor Pelletier. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Motion carries. Item number 3, we just need to lift from the table.
I'll motion to
Okay.
lift it from the table.
Motion was made by Councilor Dion, seconded by
Second.
Councilor Pelletier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Motion carries. Motion grant to leave to withdraw
Motion to withdraw.
Second.
was made by Councilor Dion, seconded by Councilor Pelletier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Motion carries. Item number 4 is a discussion with regards to road repair with Liberty Utilities. This was tabled on June 25th, 2018.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention, I'm sorry.
Councilor was waving at you.
I know, I know.
Motion to lift from the table
I'll make a motion to lift it from the
Second.
table.
was made by Councilor Dion, seconded by Councilor Pelletier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Motion carries. Could I just have the administration come down? Thank you, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Thank you. This was filed by one of our former colleagues, Joseph Camara, and there was a lot of conversation going back and forth, and I think the issues still kind of resonate with the councilors before us and also some residents. Obviously, Liberty Utilities is doing a phenomenal job of finally getting to their infrastructure. Unfortunately, they're leaving our roads in disrepair. So if we could, I guess just for myself, number one, really want to talk about, and we've talked a little bit about this in council in terms of trying to really coordinate the work and the effort that's being done by Liberty Utilities with some of the city work in terms of the road repairs. I recognize that can be challenging. Obviously, we've got limited funding that's available for some road repairs. A lot of our money comes from the Chapter 90 funds that come from the bonds transportation bill. Is there anything that we can do as a council, as a city, outside of funding right now, and I'll take funding separately, to really kind of do a better job of, number one, holding the contractors that are performing the work on these roads, especially when they're starting to do trenches along, I don't know, almost a mile of roadway, especially when we start talking about secondaries. Because I think when we start talking about mains, there's probably more of a likelihood that the city's going to get to those roads, right? So, but we're starting to see Liberty Utilities cutting off, going down these secondary streets, and then those streets are already in disrepair. We've got trenches. They're either a binder cost, or there's no real final pavement with infrared. And I know we've got an ordinance that states exactly flowable fill and what they need to do in terms of the repairs of the trench work. But is there anything that we can do to hold these individuals accountable, really do a better job of working with Liberty Utilities? So I'd open up to you and
Yeah.
Byron.
So I'll start off, and then obviously I'll give way to Byron's expertise. But since we've had that meeting originally when Councilor Kamara put the resolution in, we've met with Liberty a couple of times. We've made some significant improvements as far as what we require as a city for their repairs. So years ago, it would have been where, multiple service trenches, as you stated. So you go along a mile of roadway, you have every house gets connected to the main line for gas. Each one of those houses requires a trench. Where if they did 4 or 5 in a row, we'd have 4 or 5 patches. We worked with them to offset that issue by requiring them to encompass those 4 or 5 service trenches into one cutout patch, as opposed to smaller 2-foot trenches that are more likely to fail. And subcompaction was an issue with that, but I'll get to that piece in a bit. So what that does, encompassing those trenches into one, as opposed to having 4 trenches with 4 seams at the edges, that's 12 seams, that one patch has 4 seams, less likely to fail. It's a larger patch, it's a stronger patch, more likely to hold up over the course of time. With their mainline repairs, as they run down the main lines and replace those, we've now gotten to a point where it's a standard 8-foot repair. From curb line toward the center line of the roadway, it's an 8-foot patch. So now when you see Liberty go in and repair their mains, as opposed to that, again, 2-foot trench running down the entire street, you'll see an 8-foot patch that's done the length of the street. That also helps to increase the compaction and the stability of those trenches. So we've made those repairs, those changes with them.
Could I just interrupt you with that?
Absolutely.
So President Ave, that's not the
So-
8-foot, right? So because that's the trench line going.
Yeah, so if you look at those trenches, you'll see that's a wide line trench.
Yeah.
But to go 8 foot from the curb to where the main went in at
Mhm.
President Avenue, it's more than 8 feet. So if you measured that trench going up,
That's
I
8
haven't
feet.
measured it personally, and I don't want to give you the wrong information, but I would imagine, and I'm gonna say, and I will get you the right information, that if you measured that trench going up in all of its areas, it's going to be about that 8 foot.
So when you say 8 feet, you're talking about are you talking about the line? So if I'm going up President Ave, you've got the trench in the shoulder, right? So
Mhm.
you're saying that extends 8 feet?
8 feet from the curb, right. Now,
Okay.
at
And
some
then
point.
you've got obviously the ones that go all the way to the middle of the road.
Right, the service trenches that will cut across. Now, as you said, and you pointed out President Ave at the council meeting, and you're right, we could have done a better job of making sure that we knew when we were going in and possibly gotten the whole roadway done. But with that said, as it zigzags, you'll see in certain areas that main line has to be moved. So they're going from one end to the other. So where the main line is, you'll have the main line in the center, 4 feet on either side of it. So that'd be your 8 foot.
Yep.
If it is running up along the curb line, you'll have that repair from the curb line out 8 feet into the center, which
Mhm.
kind of gives it a better look. And obviously, as I said, aesthetically, President Ave doesn't look pretty, but I think anybody would be hard pressed that's in the industry to say that those repairs aren't much better than what we've seen in the past.
No, I think those, speaking personally,
Mhm.
I think the quality of work that was done on President Ave was phenomenal, right?
Correct.
Because
Good.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
Yep, yep.
Right, so I think they did a great job of doing that. I
Yeah.
think unfortunately, we missed the boat, as we talked about,
Correct.
getting that entire roadway either from, the curb or the shoulder all the way to at least the middle line, so we have at least one. And then
One lane.
if we're doing a seam, we're
Yeah.
doing it in the middle of the travel lane, so you're not really gonna see it. You're either gonna have thermoplast or some striping
Yeah.
along the lines. The other piece, and the only thing I would pick on in terms of, I guess, President Ave, if we're gonna stay on President Ave, is how do we coordinate, and I get it, they're a business, right? So they're looking at their bottom line,
Yeah.
right? So they're gonna try to minimize how much linear footage they're gonna need for all their paving and all that other stuff. But if you go down President Ave or up President Ave, depending on which way you're going, you would have your service trench, and then maybe about a foot, you've got a crater in there, which is a pothole, right?
Mhm.
So to me, that's frustrating, where we've got a newly, patched service line, and they literally could have extended it a foot. And I seen one coming from Newport Creamery to the west, right? So east to west,
Yeah.
going there, and I think it was right next to the right when you pass Ellsbury, so the dentist office over there, right? So it literally is. If it's 2 feet, then that seems like a long distance, but it was pretty big, and to me, at some point, I think somebody should be having a conversation, or even if it's the city, to go out there and the engineer or the planning department or somebody to really kind of look at the roads and say, okay, they're gonna go out, they did the cuts, it was probably, a week before they actually finished it, because you've seen some cuts coming in, I wouldn't say that, was probably the weekend, right? So they did it on a Thursday or Friday, they came in on a Monday, did everything. But if we could go out there and we see that there's a foot, or that there's a pothole somewhere, to see if they can kind of just extend that a little bit. Those are the types of things that I'd like to see. Me personally, I'd really like to see if there's a way, whether it's through ordinance or whatever the case may be, to really kind of have Liberty Utility come in and make them go to the middle of the road,
Yeah.
right? So if they're gonna do a trench, and trench services, at least they're paving one lane. So if we're going back, we only have one lane to do, because, I mean, you've got quality work in there, and then if we're gonna go and repair that, to me, it's a waste of money on both sides. So,
Right,
so if we can have conversations with, obviously Liberty Utilities, and have them obviously put the monies on the table that they were gonna actually spend on that project, we take it and we just do the entire thing ourselves. From my standpoint, that makes so much better, much more sense. And I get we can only do that on the primaries, right? So that there's just only so much revenue and funding that we have. My concern, though, is what are we doing on the secondaries? So where all these residents have been waiting to get their roads, repaved. We obviously don't get to them because we've got a long list of roads that we need to fix. How do we ensure that, they're doing the right things over there, and not making those streets worse than what they already were?
Right, so that's multi-pronged, so I'll try to attack it from where you started. So as far as the quality work on President Ave, you're right. And if you look at their work around the city, although, nothing's perfect. So you're gonna find some trenches that aren't, necessarily up to par. But we had an issue, and I won't call them out specifically by name, but the contractor at the time when these issues all reared their ugly head, we had issues with that contractor as a city. They weren't timely, they weren't local, so it was more difficult for them to constantly be in the area and ready to go. It took them time to mobilize, and they weren't getting the work done as quickly and up to par as we were looking for. So we talked to Liberty about switching the contractors. They looked into that. They did inevitably hire a different contractor to do their repair work. It's a local company, much easier for them to mobilize. That made things a lot easier. And then I think the most important thing, and I think this was probably the most progressive thing that came out of that meeting, was we were looking for Liberty to hire a third-party inspectional service company to be out there. We as a city, and I think you guys as a council know this, we have one city inspector. Does a phenomenal job, yeoman's work. I challenge anybody much younger than him to even keep up with him. But the fact remained we had one inspector. So we were looking for Liberty to hire a third-party inspectional service. As opposing to going out and doing that, they actually created a new position within Liberty Utilities, which was their inspector. So that is a counterpart to our inspector, that they work together to inspect all of the work that's being done by Liberty. It's scheduled by a different individual, and then the inspector goes out and makes sure that we mark the roadways the right way. Our inspector works with him to make sure that that is done the way we're looking for it to be done and up to the specs that we're looking at. So those two things have really beefed up our ability to watch what's happening and make sure that the work is being done correctly. And ever since they've hired that person, that's where you've seen the increase as far as the quality of the work that they're doing. Certainly, your point, we're running a trench line up the side of the road and there's a pothole that gets missed in the middle. I think that's definitely a good point that we can definitely bring up with them and try to make sure that we encompass that. Whether it's several or the number of them might get to a point where, we're footing the bill for that, but they're doing the work with the contractor, or as you said, we know what it was gonna cost, we do it ourselves and Liberty reimburses us. Byron and I are actually talking about that, how we wanna attack that on a street close by here, that's gonna be done. Rather than doing just that trench, we're gonna do the whole street, it needs it. Why have one half that's really good and the other half that's really bad? We've had a conversation with them, it was a conference call, myself, Mr. Holmes, Mr. Ferlin from Water, and Liberty's new leadership. Bill Peck is retired. He was the head of Liberty Utilities for quite some time in this region. He retired, they have a new representative now. And we wanted to get a meeting together with them to see where they're at, what they're thinking. I brought up the concern that you had about President Avenue, and the main onus of that was to get to know them, get to meet the new people, and bring up that particular fact that we need to work better together to know where water's going, where gas is going, what streets we're gonna do in Chapter 90, to prevent the 5-year moratorium streets that so often come up that, why didn't we know this was gonna happen? So we're working together. Byron has forwarded them much of the information we have about Chapter 90. They've sent us what their schedule is. Now, I will say with that, as far as their scheduling, as Mr. Furlan's CSO project and water main replacement project is federally mandated, their gas line replacement is federally mandated as well. And according to them, there's actually going to be an uptick in that compared to what they were planning on doing before. So now it's more important than ever for us to be on that same page.
Yep. So is there,
that
you mentioned about a couple of things, and then I'll recognize my colleagues so I don't take up all the time, but
Mm-hmm.
the inspector that we have in-house, I would agree with you. He does a good job, right?
Correct.
So he's, as you had mentioned, is one individual that's going out to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Are we looking, or are we advocating for some funding to help assist him in that and maybe get another third party internally so that we can have a third party contractor to go out there and just manage some of this along with him?
Yeah, I am. And as you know, well know, and we'll be getting into these conversations again very soon on the council floor, you know, things are tight.
Mhm.
We're trying to advocate for another position or an increase in that department to help us in many aspects. You know, not to get too far off track, but we had asked about the city engineer position, and where we have a few interviews set up. So that's gonna be taking place. We'd like to get an engineer back in the fold, although
Byron's
I don't want to
submitted his
lose Mr.
application?
Holm.
Oh.
So unfortunately, he hasn't, but I'm sure we'll hopefully find somebody that's qualified. But that's one piece, and that office, to be quite frank, is understaffed, and
Yeah.
has been for some time. So, we are looking at that, but as you know, with the budget constraints and the issues we face, which are very difficult, decisions that are gonna have to be made, right now, I'm not sure that's a reality. So, you know, knowing that Liberty has that counterpart on their side doing the same thing, has worked out really well.
Mhm.
I think right now, at this point, that's the best we're gonna see, until we have a clearer idea of what the budget's gonna hold for us going forward.
So do we have, you had mentioned that you have the schedule, so do we have the schedule for the next construction cycle to know what roads are going on, so that we can take a look at it and see exactly, you know, obviously, we had a list of priorities that we want to get done with the Chapter 90 monies. But if there are additional ones that are gonna do, you know, obviously, they're gonna be working on, it may make more sense to come down to the council, even if it's through bonding, right, to get some monies set aside specifically to really kind of work with Liberty Utilities so that the entire roadways are getting done. And I think that's an easier way to get some of these secondaries done as well that need to get fixed,
Yeah.
right? So if we had a schedule like that in advance, it was brought to this committee or to the full council, I think at that point, the council could have a discussion about, you know, outside of the Chapter 90 monies, you know, we really need to start investing some additional monies in our infrastructure, right? So if we're gonna rely on the Chapter 90 monies, there's always the fear, especially when we start dealing with, you know, cuts from the state, that they don't go out for a bond bill, right? And then the Chapter 90s get reduced. Highly unlikely, but it could happen, right? Or there could be a gas tax associated with it to fund it, and, you know, you can have a lot of pushback from voters and things of that nature. So I just want to make sure that at least from our standpoint, we see the list of roads that we're looking to do. We're in agreement, and if there's additional roads that Liberty Utilities are working on, if it makes sense to, you know, obviously go out for a bond, then I think it would be up to the council to have those conversations and discussions with the administration to say, hey, let's bring down an order, let's work on it. And if it becomes something similar to what we've done with the water and sewer, you know, the different phases, then maybe that's what we need to do, because you're right, it's a federal mandate. The last thing we want to do is allow the federal mandate to come down, and then, you know, we have half the roads being completed, so.
Well, along that line, when they asked me to kind of fill in until we could get a new engineer, they gave me a list of streets they were looking at. All of them are worthy candidates. So this comes out to $10 million worth of work.
Mhm.
It'll take 5 years.
Right.
So what we've done is we've gone over that list with Paul and for what he's doing for water and also with the new management at Liberty and trying to work around that. So we had held up on doing any chapter 90 work, putting it out to bid this year because we had the same concerns you did, Council, about whether there was gonna be any money.
Mhm.
But within the last 2 weeks, they have released the money, so we're
Yep.
gonna get roughly the same as last year, 1.9 million. So we're coordinating that between Paul and with the gas company on which wants to go ahead this year.
Right. And it's an election year too, so they weren't gonna hold up any monies.
Not this year. Next year, I mean,
Yeah.
chapter 90 has always been like money in the bank. They really
Mhm.
never pulled it back. But they've also, I've noticed, even since I've been gone 4 years now, I've noticed it hasn't gone up in that 4 years. It's
Right.
1.9 million and change.
Mhm.
This year, it's actually $10,000 or $20,000 less. Construction costs obviously have
Rising,
gone up.
right.
So, we're getting the same amount of money, but you're gonna get less road for the buck.
Mhm.
You're talking roughly just a couple of miles of road a year at $2 million a year. It's pretty, doesn't take long.
No, and I recognize that, and that's why I think, you know, my colleagues and I have talked about this at length, that we really need to kind of leverage our money, right? So we can't just be reliant on Chapter 90, because, I mean, when you start looking at your pavement management report that you folks put together, I mean, it's huge, right? So it's a big number, and for us to really tackle it, we'll never do it, because as we're starting to do these roads, the ones that we just did are now coming back and need to be fixed as well, so it's constantly a catch-up game, but Counselor, I was gonna say Counselor in seat two, but,
Yes.
yeah. Counselor Dion?
In terms of funding and monies, it seems like a lifetime ago right now, but we had taken back streetscapes money. Have those monies been expended? Were the streets that were targeted, have those been done? Where are we with that?
One of those is gonna be expended on a small contract we're putting out now for Broadway and Robeson Street. And the rest of it has been held in abeyance just for now, because we needed to get a better idea on the William S. Canning Boulevard project. There's some cost overruns caused by some things that MassDOT has required. They're making the project go further than originally intended. But if we don't have to use it on William S. Canning Boulevard, that'll be available for more work, and that's about $1.4 million. So even without a bond issue, you can have a little bit more money this year, just from that streetscape money you bring up.
Mhm. So that's all gonna depend on how much further and what the extra requirements are.
Well, either way, I believe there would be funds from that left over to do, even if we did need to allocate some of those funds for the William S. Canning project, there would definitely be funds left over to do more Chapter 90 streets. Now, how many of those and where we go would be the question, but there will be a second contract put out in the fall to absorb those funds and get that used and get some streets done with that. So that is definitely gonna happen. Just to what extent, we're still waiting to get the answer for William S. Canning.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Peltier, anything?
You yield?
With that, I yield, Leo.
All right, the boulevard, is there gonna be an extension, make it a little wider to go into the shopping center there?
So there is gonna be a new entrance to the shopping center coming from, when you get off 24
24.
south and you come on to William S. Canning. There will be a new offshoot into the shopping plaza.
Just for that?
Just for that.
Right-hand
correct,
side.
To alleviate some of the traffic concerns at the light there at Tucker Street.
Now, are they
And
gonna finish?
There'll be a light, sorry, Counselor, there'll also be a light placed at the end of that off-ramp. So when you come off of 24 now, it'll no longer just be a smooth transition in, you'll actually have a traffic signal there that you'll have to stop at.
Why would you put a light there?
I'm not sure that's what MassDOT
MassDOT.
is requiring.
I'll tell you, Counselor, it's funny, because I didn't put a whole lot of stock in MassDOT projects prior in terms of their engineering and feasibility and traffic studies. They've been on the money lately. I've seen a lot of some of their projects, and when you first see it and they explain it to you, you say, it's never gonna work,
So
not gonna happen. And then when the projects are in, the amount, and I'll just look at, and I know you're familiar with Seekonk, Grist Mill Curve, right?
Yeah.
We banted back and forth about that, and I said, all you're gonna do is queue up traffic, it's not gonna work, and they proved me wrong. It's phenomenal. So I mean, their engineers come in, they do the studies, so I mean, if they've made some recommendations and it kind of leaves your head scratching a little bit, you'll see a difference.
So we're talking about putting a light coming down from Tiverton, right?
No, when you
No.
come off the highway, there'll be a light, so when you come off the highway, you'll have to stop at that light and then turn onto William S. The cars
then
coming
turn.
from Tillman won't have a light there. That'll be flowing traffic.
So what is it, a red light, green, yellow, with the whole thing? Or-
Yeah.
I don't understand. They're gonna stop them, the other cars are gonna keep coming through.
Have to get the plans and get you a better idea, Counselor. I don't wanna, again,
All right, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But it'll be paved all the way up to the exit?
correct.
Okay. And you talk about, I called you on Second Street. I thought that, you know, they done 8 foot, I guess, layover, fix up the patches, the whole thing. But I called you up on that issue because they done such a stretch and they didn't take care of it right away. And I don't know if you remember the
Yeah,
call.
yeah,
And you said, well, they're gonna get it done. But it was like a nightmare going up there on Second Street.
yeah.
Ba-boom, ba-boom, all the way up. Did they go up to the avenue at the same time? Almost the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know, especially on that street, it's such a busy throughway.
Yeah.
I think you kind of notice the length of time a little
Oh,
bit
yeah.
more so because there's so many people traveling it, so many people unhappy with it. But yeah, I mean, it did take a significant amount of time before it got done. I'm just glad it's done now, and we don't have that continued problem. But that's along the lines of the conversations we're gonna continue to have with them and try to improve
Yeah.
that communication between ourselves and them, to make sure that the work gets done right, and gets done timely. So we continue to work with them. It's an evolving process, and we're moving forward with it.
How far can you go back, like a place, the Liberal Club, and the trenches there, it's all caved in and everything? Who should have been responsible to fix that up? That's a long time ago, I guess.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
The gas company
They
trenches,
they
they
own it for
own
life.
Huh?
Correct. If they're Liberty Utility or gas company trenches,
Yeah.
they own them for life.
So what's
there's
the
a
holdup?
problem with them.
What's the holdup? It's been that way for 15, 18, 20
Are
years.
you talking on the Star Street side of Liberal, or?
It'd be on Star, no, when you make right where the building for the seniors, that street right there.
Okay.
You never
Or as
went down
well.
there?
Or as well.
Oswell?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's been that way for a long, long time,
Okay.
but I don't know who's responsible. Do they always put up a bond?
I don't think we have a bond situation with Liberty, no. It's not a bond situation, but it's a given. I don't know if it's Mass General law,
state law.
state law that states they own the trench for life. So if they do their gas repairs, they own the trench for life.
All right, just go back, Middle Street, beautiful job, unbelievable.
Mr. Frolin's project?
I guess, it was his project?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what the hell happened on East Main?
He was so hesitant to give you props on that one.
No, you go and they're doing the work there, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, gorgeous. Then you got East Main Street, that's been messed up. I mean, then,
Different contractors.
yeah, we got what we could off them. We tried to get more, but we didn't get it, but we got something out of it anyway. And when they put that yellow line in between, they try to cover the crack in the middle. They've done a pretty good job with that, so you don't see it. Other than that, I think they're doing a much better job now. We just gotta remember who done East Main Street and make sure that we don't hire them, that's all. With that, I yield, thank you.
Just 2 follow-up questions. Is there anything in ordinance that you feel is lacking or needs to be changed, or is there anything that you think you need that would give you a little bit more teeth in terms of road projects?
I don't think so.
Okay.
The ordinance is in pretty good shape, I think, when it comes to patching and certain requirements in there for 5-year street and for drain layer qualifications. and
Mhm.
things. I think the ordinances are fine.
Okay.
As with everything else, it's a matter of money.
Right. Okay.
And for me, I mean, I think a big point is what you had said, you know, if we can look at council's willingness to possibly bond in the future, funds to do road repairs, I think that's big, honestly. As you said, as Byron said, Chapter 90 stays consistent, but costs continue to rise. So if we know that, you know, not every year or, you know, not just frivolously, but if we can come to the council and say, hey, you know, we need to bond for this amount of money to be able to keep up well, with, you know, Mr. Ferland's mainline repairs, Liberty's gas repairs, and the fact that we want to do complete streets as opposed to having strips up and down all of these roadways, as opposed to doing a piece of the street, let's get it completely done. But we're gonna need to bond for that. I think if that's something you can continue to discuss with your fellow councilors, and that's something that you'd be willing to do in the future, I think that'd be helpful to us as well. It'll open up a new funding source and a funding avenue that I don't think we've had really in the past, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the last time, other than your streetscape projects, the last time there was a bond issue by the city for streets was 2005.
So it's on the Lambert.
$15 million on
Yeah.
the Lambert.
Right.
And we did 75 streets in 2 years.
Mhm.
Even in today's prices, 15 million. Well, I'm not saying that that's what you should do, but
Right.
my last recommendation, I think on the last report I gave before I thought I retired, was to match, if the council or the city saw their way to match chapter 90 every year. So
Mhm.
if they put in 2 and the city puts in 2,
Yeah.
you don't have to be an engineer to realize you're gonna have twice as many streets every year. We'll catch up in a way. We were about 40 million behind at that time on streets.
So, just for closing, I know I often beat you folks up a lot, but I appreciate the work that goes into it. I know there's a ton of work that goes into, you know, road repairs, getting the bids ready, organizing and coordinating the efforts. So from engineering, planning, you know, public works, water and sewer, I recognize it. So please don't take it personal. It's just from my standpoint, I just want to make sure that the product that we're getting is the best product for the city. But when I say that, I also mean that I want to support you folks, right? So that means if we need to go out to bonding, let's do it. Let's do it right. I'd always be one counsel to make sure that, you know, if we need the resources and the funding behind it to get what we're asking for, then I'm not afraid to take those difficult votes, that I'll continue to do that. So I want you folks to recognize that. So, you know, please just be forthcoming when you're coming down to the council and just say, hey, listen, this is what we need. This is what we're looking for. This is how we correct the action. And if you give us that game plan, I think a majority of my councilors would be in agreement with that to move it forward. You know, so I just want you to understand that while I call you up and complain about it, you know, I'm not afraid to support you folks. So
Never personal.
that's what I look for, and then hopefully we can continue the good working relationship with Liberty Utilities as they continue to cut up our roads.
Yeah, I think it's gotten much better, and we'll continue to do that, and we're always welcome to come down and give you an update if you're ever looking for that. So I appreciate your words, and again, it's never personal. We're all here trying to do the same thing, so it's not a perfect world, but we do the best we can.
Appreciate it. Anything else? Great. Motion, I'm sorry, Council.
I just
Per.
have a question, sorry I got here a little bit late, but on item 1 on the agenda was the letter from Barbara Strollo.
We didn't have any public input.
Right, it was one of the letters that was attached to your committee meeting.
Oh, it's in the packet.
It's the
Yeah.
older letter that you're referring to.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's for the older one you're talking
Right,
about. Yep.
and she, you know, I told her it was on the agenda, I didn't know if she had got called about it. She said she hadn't, but that she would like to share some of her concerns, because that was done, and no one had, it's supposed to be maintained by the city. The neighbor to the right is the one that's been mowing it, and her husband is the one that's the other half.
I don't. Okay.
That wasn't done. Also in the packet, the next letter came from Terry Sullivan, and it says on there, January of 2019, that Hyacinth Street was supposed to be paved within the year. Is Hyacinth Street on to be paved
Yes,
this
it is.
year?
It is.
But that's a mess, they have a lot of buses go by there. And thirdly, just for me to jump in, when you asked if there was anything on the ordinance that could be changed, when people go for a variance to build a house on a small lot, whatever, they're never told that that street is less than 5 years old. So after they get a building permit and the house is built, they come to the council to open the street. So they should know that they're not gonna be able to open the street, and I don't know where that gets caught, by variance, by building department, whatever, but I think that should be one of the check-offs. How old is this street? I
So-
don't know, but
Yep.
Mr. Strollo did want me to say that, or she said, you know, you can call me and I'll tell them what I feel.
Yeah, so if you can have Ms. Strollo just reach out to Mr. Ferland, just because we did a motion, grant to leave to withdraw on those two items, and then he can kind of work it out, and then obviously if there's no resolution to it, then she can come back before the council, we'll take it up. Just in terms of the moratoriums on the roads, I think it happens with every community, so I'm not sure if there's a list on the website, or if we can, number one, get it on the website if it's not there already, and then if we can also maybe just keep a list with the building department, so that anybody coming in can just see what the list is, so that nobody can say that they weren't aware.
Absolutely.
Motion grant leave to withdraw?
Motion
Made by
Second.
Councilor Pelletier, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is a resolution to discuss the safety hazard created by limited lighting on the public street. We received communication from Mr. Gallagher that he's not here, so I think we should just keep that item tabled, and
Want me to give you an update?
we'll bring it up on the next. You can if you want to, but we'll just keep it tabled and then bring it up.
I'll give you an update. The problem is, Creed, the lighting manufacturer, doesn't want to pay the money that needs to be paid to Bishop Electric to put it to, and they want to give him nothing to redo it, take it down, put it all together, put it back up. So now they're in negotiations over that. That
For a
was
settlement.
going to help money. And he said it's difficult to contact the city.
Okay.
But there needs to be work done on that. Don't take it too long, because
No, we're gonna table until we.
come in and then people, the lighting goes, sunsets earlier.
Yeah, we'll either take it up at the end of August or September.
Motion to table.
Second.
It's already tabled, so we never lifted it,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
so we'll leave it there.
okay.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of May 19th, 2020?
So made. Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion was made by Councilor Dion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Pelletier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Motion carries. Any other business? Motion to adjourn made by Councilor Pelletier.
Second.
Second by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. The Committee on Public Works is now adjourned.